Now, so far in this section, we've seen how to add CSS styles to our elements by either adding a style attribute to the tag itself, or by adding a rule to the style tag at the top, or by adding one to the linked style sheet itself. Now, for each of the style rules we've made so far, we've used the tag name as our selector, which is great when you want to change every instance of that tag on the page. But what if you only want to change the style of a few of the elements? We could go back to using the style attribute, but when we use those, we have to put the style values directly on each tag. And if you have a lot of tags using the same style, and you have to make a change later, you would need to copy the change to every place you used it. And if you have a site with hundreds of pages, that could take a long time. We have a better way that will let us use the style exactly where we want it to, and still make use of the convenient style tag or style sheets. So in this lesson, I want to show you how to use the class and ID attributes. Now, for our sample styles document, let's say you wanted to set a color for just the second and third paragraphs, but not the first one. Well, the first thing I need to do is go back to our document, and in each one of those paragraphs, I'll add the class attribute. I'll add it here after the style attribute. And remember, we can have our attributes in any order we like. I'll set the value of this attribute to blue-para. And since we want our other paragraph to be the same color, I'll copy that attribute and just paste it down here as well. Now let's go up to our style tag and we'll create a rule for this new class. I'll just go down underneath the last rule we made, and here I'll type the class name again. But to make sure our document knows that this is a class style instead of a tag style, we'll start out the class name with a period. Now we just finish out our style rule just like we did with all the others. I'll need a set of braces, and then inside I'll just set the color to blue. Now let's save and refresh and see how that worked. Now you can see our second and third paragraphs are blue. And notice that the first paragraph still has the style attribute that applies the small size to it. So as you can see, we can mix our style rules any way we like too. When you create a class, you can use it anywhere in your document. I'll go down to the first item in the list and add it there. I'll just go inside the li tag, and I can paste in the class name. We'll save that change. We'll go back out to our browser and refresh the page, and you can see that that item is blue as well. Now, of course, if we added that rule to our style sheet instead, we could use that class in any page on our site as well. Just make sure when using a class, you always start out the class name with a period when you're making the style. Now let's try this again, but this time we'll use the ID attribute instead. I want the heading at the top here to be green. So first, I'll go to the heading, and I'll add in an ID attribute this time. We set it up the same way. We just need to make up a name for it, so I'll call this main-heading. Now once again, let's go over to our style tag and we'll make a rule for it. This time, since it's an ID, instead of using a period to start out the name, we use the pound sign or number sign. I'll use the same name, and we'll create a similar rule for it. This time I'll set the color to green. Now let's save that change, and we'll go out to the browser and refresh. And you can see my heading is now green up here as well. So far, it seems these two attributes do the same thing, except for one we use a period, and the other has a pound sign. So what's the difference? Well, in HTML, when you use an ID on an element, that ID is unique for that page, meaning I will only have one main heading on my pages. Now with the class, I can use that on as many elements as I want. As you can see, the ID is special. Since it's unique on the page, we can actually use it to locate a specific part of the page. And we'll see how that works when we get to the links section. But for now, just know that you can only have one item on each page with unique ID. Now you can even have an element that has both a class and an ID. If you start to add JavaScript to your pages, then you'll notice that the ID can be very important. But for us, CSS will work with either one of these attributes, so you can pick the one that works for you best. If you aren't sure whether you'll have more than one element on the page, just use the class instead of the ID. Now, when using these two attributes, there are two more tags that you'll find useful in helping you to select the right part of your page to style. Both of these tags can be used to group items together, so you can apply your style rules to the right content. Now, suppose you wanted to make these three words in the first paragraph green. Right now, that would actually be difficult, since there's currently no tag there that you can apply your style to. So what we'll do is we'll add in a span tag before the first word, and we'll close the span tag after the third. The span tag doesn't do anything by itself, but it does give us a convenient place to add attributes, like a style attribute, or in our case, a class. I'll go to our opening span tag, and we'll add a class to it, and I'll just give it the name Special Words. Notice one thing when I'm making up my class names, I try not to use anything with a space in it, so in most cases I'm adding a dash or an underscore, or you can just use a capital letter to separate them so that they're easy to read. Now, just like before, I'll go up to my style tag, and we'll create a rule for this. We'll use dot since it's a class. We'll add in our class name, and then I'll set up braces for the rule. And just so we can see them, I'll just change the color to green again. Save our change. We'll go back over to our page and refresh. And now you can see those three words are green. Now, just like before, I can use this class again anywhere I like, on a paragraph or list item or another span tag. In this case, we use the span tags to group those words together. And we have another tag that we can use also to group things together. And that's the div tag. And we use that when we want to group whole elements together. I'll use a div to group these two headings with this paragraph here at the bottom. We'll just go back over to our document, and I'll start the div tag out here, and end it down below the paragraph. Once again, let's use this tag to make a class. I'll just make the class name group. Once again, like before, we'll go up and make a style for our class. It'll be .group and our braces. Now for this style rule, let's try something different. In an earlier lesson, we saw that we can use the M tag to make our text italic. But in this case, I'd have to add M tags to all three of the tags we have here. Well, we can also make that kind of a change using CSS as well. So I'll use the font-style property. And we'll just set the value to italic. Let's save our change. And back over here in the browser, I'll refresh the page, and you can see that my two headings and my paragraph are now showing with italics. Now, before we finish out this lesson, there's one more thing I want to show you. So far, we've seen several different ways to target a specific place on our page when we want to apply a style. When you're trying to get to one particular spot on the page, you can also combine these selectors, and that will help you get to the right place. For example, what if I wanted to change the subheading here to a different color as well? Now, we could create a special class just for that. But if we look, we notice that it's already included inside the div class that we just created. I'll go up to our style tag, and let's add another style rule. Since our heading is inside the div, I can start with the same class name we used before, .group. Now, as we just saw, that would target all of the elements of the group. So I'll add a space after the class name, and instead I'll type in H2. And now, this particular rule will only target H2 elements inside that group. That means it'll leave the rest of the group alone, and it will also ignore other H2 elements that are outside the group. I'll just change the color to red so that we can spot it. And I'll make sure to close the braces for my style rule here at the bottom. Now let's save that change. And we'll go back out to the browser and refresh. And now you can see just that H2 has been changed to red, leaving all the other elements of the group and the other H2 element alone.